introduction. Thanks, Bethlin, for that introduction, and thank you to the attendees who are joining us here on San Diego Google Developer Group for the Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021 meeting. Let me go ahead and present this screen. We've gone over our code of conduct with our GDG leader, Bethlin. We have a few announcements before we get into today's exciting Cloud Lab presentation. You may be aware already. If you are not, please visit g.co/cloudnext, which is the Google Cloud Next 2021 conference. And this year, again, as it was in 2020, it is going to be all virtual. Nice thing is also that no codes are necessary, right? This year it's completely free. So please register for that. You'll get alerts on the sessions. A little bit more about that. It is a 3-day event this year. Last year it was spread out over, I think it was a total of 9 days. And some people said that they kind of prefer this format, right? Consolidated down to 3 days, and there are live keynotes happening every day. There are then on-demand content, and then you can also find interactive Q&A sessions to talk with experts on that. So if you're interested in some of the topics that we're covering tonight, do check out the Google Cloud Next, and again, it's g.co/cloudnext to register completely free. As we've talked about in previous meetings as well, GDG San Diego is collaborating together with C2C, which is the independent Google Cloud community. Trying to build that community of independent Google developers is the mission of GDG, and C2C is to unite Google Cloud customers across the globe. So I think we align very well in being, for the users, by the users. And one of the exciting collaborations that GDG San Diego is able to offer is, if you note the week after Google Next that we just talked about, Google Cloud Next, the following Tuesday, we're going to have the first ever in North America C2C Connect in-person event. So this is actually going to take place here in Del Mar in San Diego, and we will be accepting registrations for this event. So I'm going to put the link into the chat of the meet, and I would invite you, if you are interested, to register for that. It is required, and there are some instructions in there with regard to COVID protocol in the venue here in San Diego that is going to be hosting us. But I'm very hopeful that this will be the start of some exciting collaboration between C2C and GDG. This is the registration page. It's very simple. You'll sign up for a C2C account. One of the other nice things is that something that we don't have with GDG is there is an online groups component to that, and based on what you might be interested in, whether it's infrastructure, data analytics, application development, workspace, or just getting started, or a lounge, SAP even. There are different topics, and you can see there's many members and a number of topics that you can go on and discuss. So I encourage you to explore the C2C global community, and I hope to see many of you at this event. Moving on to the reason that most of you are here this evening. We are going to do another Cloud Jam, Cloud Study Jam for GDG. These are self-paced labs. So what is a study jam? It's a community event for collective learning. So together, we're going to guide you with the help of a trusty Googler engineer here, Muriel, through another cloud lab. And what does this benefit for you? Well, first and foremost, it's hands-on training in a real live environment, and you'll have access to an actual Google Cloud console using not a personal account, so you can kind of crumple it up and throw it away and start over if you needed to. This is actually something that typically we charge for. There's a package that you can buy that for $55, which is a good value for that, gives you a full month of unlimited access. If you complete the first lab in this quest that we're going to do today, your account will be credited with a 30-day subscription. And I'll let you in on a little secret. If you complete that full quest, that will actually unlock another 30 days for you. But you have to complete the lab to get the first 30 days, and you have to complete the full quest to get another 30 days. So with that in mind, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is this quest, right? We're going to be doing deploy to Kubernetes, and it has multiple sections, right? Multiple labs within this quest. So we're not going to do all of them today. You'll see if you look at this quest, you will see that it has 7 hours worth of work, right? So we're only going to do the first one, maybe 2 sections on here. The final one is actually a challenge lab, and that challenge lab is something that's going to be cumulative, so you can practice all of the things that that you've learned during the Qwiklab. If you've never done Qwiklabs, the first thing that you're going to need to do is sign up for an account. And these instructions were in the email that went out for the event. So if you already have a Qwiklabs account, you can go and visit google.qwiklabs.com. And if you are signed in, this workflow works best if you first sign out and then follow along with these instructions. So you're going to go to this website here, and let me paste those links in. To the chat over here. And on that website, you're going to see basically a menu of study jams. And one of the items on there is going to be the one that looks like this, deploy to Kubernetes. And you're going to click enroll. Once you click enroll, it's going to ask you for a code. This is a Qwiklabs, a study jam access code. So I will paste the code also into the chat. So that you can copy it. That code is what's going to get you enough credits to complete the first lab in this quest. So when you've signed in with your account and you've enrolled in the quest, it's going to assign some credits to you. So you can see here in the first one, you can see I have a number of credits in my account. Once you've finished the first lab in the quest, if you sign out and sign back in, right, and you don't have to do that immediately, you'll be able to get through the first lab in the quest, but it will notice that you've completed that lab, and it will actually assign you a monthly subscription, which is the nice thing to have out of this. And then at that point, you're ready to go, right? You can go and complete the rest of the Qwiklabs. So let me show you a couple of things here about that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Muriel, who's going to lead you through this Qwiklab quest. But if you do have any challenges, make sure you try signing out of your Qwiklab account and sign back in. It should be pretty painless, but occasionally there's a little bit of trouble recognizing that code. The other thing is, if at this point when you go to start your lab, you get a prompt like this that is asking you to buy credits or buy a subscription. Today, you don't need to do that. You should sign out and go back through the process that we just outlined, right? Go to that Study Jams menu, choose the quest that we're going to enroll in, and re-enter that code. Please don't pull out your credit card today. And if you have any trouble at all, we'll help you get through that. 2 other things to point out here is the lab is enabled to work in whichever way you're most comfortable, right? So you'll see instructions for how to do it in the graphical user interface, as well as using Cloud Shell, the command line interface inside of the Google Cloud Platform console. And then finally, if you feel like you've messed up or you're lost or you've done something that you don't think you can recover from, it's not a problem. You can end your lab and restart it, and you will get a fresh, pristine environment inside of Qwiklabs to work within. and that will also reset the timer. And there's usually ample time to complete the lab. But the other thing that you need to do at the very end is make sure that you actually do end the lab. If you just close the browser, it'll wait until that timer all the way times out, and then it'll notice that you've completed the lab. So as soon as you complete the lab and you're done exploring, just click End Lab, and that will bring you to the next section of the quest. With that, I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to introduce our facilitator today, Muriel. Muriel, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Hello, sure. Thank you for all that, Kyle and Svetlin. So I am also a customer engineer, similar to Kyle, focused here in the Los Angeles area for enterprise customers. I have been at Google for about 1.5 years now, and a lot of my background before I started here was actually as a tech practitioner. So working on things like deploying Kubernetes, which we're doing, Docker, primarily in application development, DevOps, CI/CD pipelines. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun today going through some of these fundamentals and helping you on your quest, which is starting today. So let me go ahead and get my screen share going. Let's see. Well, just let me share a window is the question. All right, so we should be live now. Can I get a thumbs up if we're online and our screen is visible? Cool. So Kyle did a super awesome job of getting us to this point in Qwiklabs. If you do have an issue, you can pop that into chat. Make sure you've got that code in there. And as you see, we're here as part of the quest. One thing I will also call out is that when you do go through all of the quests, or any of the quests that are here in Qwiklab, you actually get this super cool digital badge that kind of verified that you went through. You started at the beginning, you went through your learning journey, and you were able to accomplish everything down to this challenge lab. And as you can see, as you complete each of these stages in the quest, you'll get a little green checkbox. I've got one left to go here, which is just that last challenge lab. And you can always go back and rerun any of these if you wanted to go through do any more learning. If there's a skill that you wanted to be able to get more practice in, then all of that stuff is here within Qwiklabs. So we're going to start with the introduction to Docker. And after that, if we've got some time, we're going to go through the Kubernetes engine quick start. So Kyle had also mentioned there are a couple ways of working with Google Cloud. This one in particular is going to be very centered around the command line. So if you've got familiarity with navigating the command line and being able to run things within a shell or terminal, that's super helpful, but also it's not necessary. You've got ample time, and you can see a timer up here at the top. That's how much space you have when this development environment is going to be up and running, but generally that's way more time than you need. So you can take your time, go through the instructions. Everything is pretty much explained here as you go, so that you should be able to catch up, follow along. And as Kyle mentioned, if you do need to hit that reset, go back in. This all just sets up a completely fresh development environment for you. So if you do make a mistake or anything, you don't have to worry about messing anything up that might be running in production.
Let me just do a quick status check with everyone. Those who are attending and are going to follow along and hopefully complete the lab together, you want the joining code. I got you.
And I will say
again to Abhishek.
I will say I highly encourage everyone, and I mean every one of you, to join along, follow along with this lab as well, just so that I can get any feedback as we go. If you've got any notes that you'd like to throw in as we walk along for everybody listening at home and everybody that's live on this meet also, I think it would be super fun to be able to all of us walk through this together.
And one other maybe pro tip here is the Qwiklab component you can run using just your regular Chrome browser window. And I'm sure Muriel will probably cover this. I'm probably blowing your your intro here is if you run the the actual Cloud Console in an incognito window, that might help. So if you're thinking, how am I going to do the signing in and signing out, consider pulling up the other in an incognito.
Yeah, and you'll see I've kind of got these here side by side so you can see them on the screen. This was a little bit of a teaser for that. You can see it's in that incognito mode. But once we get to that point, but this is kind of a useful way of being able to visualize it. If you've got two monitors, one thing you can do also is have the Qwiklab up in one and your incognito window up in the other. But also if you've just got one or you're on a laptop or something, having them side by side also is a good way to be able to cross-reference, because you'll have a lot of your instructions here on the left side, and then the actual things that you're going to be doing within console here on your other window.
How you doing, Abhishek? I saw you asked for the links back in the chat. Did that get you where you need to be?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Let us know if you run into any trouble at all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and click Start Lab over here. As you can see, it will go through. Basically, this is the process of getting that development environment set up for you. And once that timer does expire, all of that just gets wiped out and refreshed. So while this is spinning up here, I wanted to show you a couple other things. You can see this little yellow box up at the top corner. And what this does is throughout the lab, you'll actually have different checkpoints that can validate your progress. So as you accomplish your tasks in the background, there's a way of seeing, hey, did I do this portion correctly? Did my infrastructure, did the application, or whatever my task is finish? For this lab, it's going to be, just only a couple checkpoints. But when you look at some of the more complex labs, some of the ones that may even go up to a few hours or so or challenge, this is kind of helpful because you'll get an idea of your progress to see, all right, did I complete phase A? Did it go through successfully? And that's sort of your gate for being able to move forward. As you can see here, the lab is up and running. You have all of your credentials along with the project ID, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But what we'll do is we'll copy over the username and password and come in here and log into the console itself. Another thing is throughout the lab instructions as well, you'll see this little mark. This is going to be important a little bit later. As you'll see in the lab, you have the option to be able to copy some of the commands, the details like the user and password and so on. And that'll take this right into your clipboard for you. Oh, I'm doing a little bit of double copy. There we go. So we've got username and password. There are going to be a few of these just initial terms and conditions screen, just since this is a new account, but feel free to go ahead and click through all of these. And the final screen, and we are going to be here live. Cool. So welcome to the Cloud Console. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. We won't go into too many of the details here. You'll be able to read along at home or after the fact. But this lab is essentially going to be an introduction to Docker. So, Abhishek, it sounds like you've been working with Kubernetes. Some of the folks here, just familiarity with containers, up, thumbs up. So basically in this, a lot of this is going to be centered around using Cloud Shell, as I mentioned, and looking at some of the tools to be able to build an application. And then also from there, we'll be able to take this container that we've built and be able to push that up to a container registry. So we're starting from the beginning. You don't need a ton of experience with Docker or any, actually. You'll be able to sort of start from the beginning. And from here, you've gone through all of the steps to actually build Node.js application, package that up into a container, and then push it up to a registry and run it. So a lot of this intro part of it goes into some of those fundamentals. For the benefit of those listening at home, I did have a little bit of a screen here that I can show that has some of the intro to containers. I won't spend too long on it because I think what we want to do is just jump right in to get hands on. So at a baseline, you know, if we just wanted to start from the fundamentals, containers are really a better and more efficient way to be able to develop and deploy applications. You have a consistent environment, dependencies, you're able to run this anywhere. As you'll see, we're running this in Cloud Shell, but you'll be able to take the same container that has been built, run it locally, run it, you know, on another virtual machine, kind of wherever it goes. It's just very portable, and that allows for isolation. And it's basically taking what you might have had on an actual virtual machine, running as a full deployment with all of the operating system, the libraries, the dependencies, and so on, and now taking it and packaging it up into a little unit. So that was just from a very, very high level, sort of the snapshot of containers. There are a lot of resources and links that we'll paste in as well and share with the group that go into this. There are even a ton of comics out there that people have done that go into just container concepts and so on, and those are a lot of fun to be able to use as a resource. So back to the lab. We'll scroll down here, and while we're going through our instructions, I'm going to go ahead and activate Cloud Shell. So we talked a little bit here about the console. So here you can see this is the UI. You've got your landing page over here along with some information about the products. The menu on the left goes into all of the different components that you can find in cloud, everything from compute, Kubernetes engine, which we're going to be visiting later. But what we're going to start with is up here at this top navigation menu. So you saw the project that was listed earlier. We'll go ahead and select that from the menu up top. All of your projects, regardless of your lab environment, should start somewhat like this, Qwiklabs-GCP. So we'll go ahead and select that. And then from here, you have some other links up at the top. This is the one that we want, which is Activate Cloud Shell. So I'm just going to hit this little menu up at the top to minimize side so we can get kind of a full view of this Cloud Shell that's provisioning here at the bottom. So how are we all doing so far?
Everybody okay with the access code to get your free credits? You should get, I think it is 9 from this one. That will get you through the first Qwiklab. Anybody struggling with that, let me know and I can chat you. I'll work around.
So as you can see here at the bottom, this is basically the Cloud Shell terminal. And what this is actually a fully running virtual machine that's within your environment. It already has the access built in to your GCP account. So all of the security and everything, you can be ensured that it's locked down. It's based on your login into Google Cloud. That's what allows you to be able to interact with different resources that are within GCP. So from here, you can see a few little different menu items I'll go into for a little bit. But essentially, this is, you've got 5 gigs of storage that persists between sessions. So this actually in your own Google Cloud environment. Not here, as I mentioned, the Qwiklabs is itself just a temporary environment. But when you're running your own stuff in Google Cloud, this lasts between sessions. So if you needed to save anything within this, you know, you can set up some tooling. And also one of the great things about Cloud Shell is there are actually various command line and build and developer tools that are already built in. So if you look, the one that we're going to be running is related to Docker, of course, for this lab. But there are other tools such as Git, if you can see, that's already set up. Things like VI, the editor. We have other tools such as the G-Cloud Suite. And that's one of the main tools that you'll be able to use from the command line to interact with Google Cloud resources. And then this final one, which I'll land on, is Filter. And that's what we're going to get started with. So as I mentioned, a lot of this lab really centers around operating out of the Cloud Shell terminal. So what I'm actually going to do is expand this out. So you can see here we've got some different options. You know, we can maximize the screen here. And now we've got kind of a full window since we're going to be working out of this area for the most part at the start of this lab. If you want to click back in here, then it brings you back to the console. So you can now go back in and navigate around the UI. So let's pop back up.
Here, let me take a quick pause and check in with Abhishek. I saw your message, Abhishek, that it's asking you for another code when you try to launch the Docker lab. So is that maybe the Qwiklabs code, not the Quest code, right?
I tried using the first code, but it didn't add any credit to my account. So
It didn't do that.
I
Yep.
guess that's why it was asking
Right.
for another token.
That's correct. Okay, yeah, that is the workaround there. I just pasted a link to go generate a code, or I actually put a code that I just generated for you.
Okay.
If you don't mind, yeah, go back to the Cloud Study Jams 2021 link and get it to prompt you again, and then try putting this other code in there, and that should give you enough credits. Let me know if that doesn't do it. You're welcome.
All right, so let's get back to telling the world hello. So we are here, as I mentioned, within the Cloud Shell terminal. You can see here's where we're starting. And what we're basically going to do is pull down this Hello World container from Docker Hub, which there's a repository of a lot of these public images that are available to access without needing a username and password. So we're going to pull down that container and run it here within Cloud Shell. Another note that I wanted to say just before we launched into that as well is we do have a lot of these handy cheat sheets that go into some of the different options that are available within the Qwiklabs command line. Here is the link for reference, which we can paste in chat as well. But you can see it's the cloud.google.com SDK Qwiklabs reference, and it's got a lot of these handy shortcuts that you can use as you're navigating around Cloud Shell. So we're going to go in here and do Docker run hello world. So I'll call out one thing right here, and let me actually see if I can make the terminal screen a little bit bigger. I know that sometimes, just depending on resolution, it might not come across super clear in the share. So you can see here, after we ran it, there's this first line, unable to find the image locally. So the first thing that will really happen when you're running Docker is it will look on your local system to see if there is an image with that name. If that image is not available, as it's not, we're in a fresh environment, basically this is going out to Docker Hub, looking for that image and pulling it down. And as you can see, all this application really did is give you a hello from Docker, along with a little bit of a message. So you can see this kind of checks out. It's the same thing that you expect to see with the command output over here on the Qwiklabs. So let's keep on going. So the next part of this is to run Docker images. And what we're doing here is basically looking to see what images are available on your local system. We've got the hello world image, the tag, and this tag will be a little bit important, will be important later. We'll see how this comes into play, and just a little bit more information about the image itself, an ID, creation date, size, and so on. So let's go ahead and run that same command again. So what I'll do, there is the command history that's saved within the Cloud Shell terminal, as similar to other terminals. So let's just go up and rerun the same thing that we just did, Docker run hello world. So if you see something kind of different happen this time around, rather than saying that this was unable to find the image and going through this process of downloading, one, it launched much faster. It's a pretty lightweight image, so It's going to be kind of quick, but also it just went through and directly ran that same message, the hello from Docker. Basically what's happening is since this image was already stored locally, it was a lot faster. Instead of having to go out and look for this image that's available, now you were able to just run the one that was on the system. So the next piece of this is we're going to go through and look at the running containers on the system. And to do that, it's Docker PS. So that might sound familiar if you're familiar with some command line tools such as PS on a system, which is what you use to be able to see a list of the different running processes. What this does essentially is show you the running containers. So here we go. So now this might look weird. We just ran hello world, but there is nothing listed in the container images. Well, essentially what's happening is, and I'll show you here actually by running the next command, which is Docker ps-a. The container did run, but it exited. Basically, all that service did was really launch, run. It shows this message, this hello from Docker. And after that, it shuts down. There was no need for this specific service to run persistently to keep saying hello, hello. It was just sort of a one-time message that ran and then exited. So you can kind of see that here, that that service, that container ran and exited, and you can see the time kind of checks out where we had that first one that we ran 3 minutes ago, and this second one here that was just run. And if you ever need to be able to validate, you could also kind of see here as well, several labs will include what you might expect to see for command output. So in case you do get some unexpected result of some type, you can kind of cross-reference. I've done this plenty of times where I either had a typo or maybe I didn't copy and paste the right thing or I missed a step. Then you can kind of help validate because there's various checkpoints along the way. Now, as I kind of mentioned earlier, this is an introduction quest. So you're kind of starting at the beginning, no experience necessary. But as you progress through some of the different challenge labs, some of them will get progressively harder, and it will get to the point where you might not have a list of the specific steps that you need to run. It'll actually just give you maybe some objectives. So you may run into a challenge lab that just says, you know, build and run a container that, you know, launches a hello world or launches a web server. And from there, it's open for you to be able to work through, figure out how to achieve that task. So we just went through the run part where we were running a container that somebody else has built. So now we're going to go to the second phase where we're actually going to build a container. And this is going to be an image based on a node application. So the first part of this is, so we'll run this command here, make dir test and cd test. And so what this is basically going to do, this little portion here with the two ampersands basically says if the first part of the command executes successfully, then move on to the second piece. So we're going to basically create a folder and go into that folder. So as you can see now here, it's changed from this little tilde sign, which is basically your home directory within Cloud Shell, into this test directory. And now here is where that little copy symbol is going to come in handy, because we've got a ton of code here, which, you know, I actually recommend if you have time to go through, type it out, because that kind of helps with learning what you're doing. I think, you know, Jesse had mentioned that the last time we were on here also. It's like a great way of being able to kind of build that muscle memory of the different commands, the file type and structure that you're running. So for now, just to keep things simple and to save you from seeing my typos and typing, we're going to go ahead and copy. So basically what we're doing here is we're creating a Docker file. And this is kind of like a blueprint for the container that we're going to be building. There is a lot of stuff happening here, and this Qwiklab actually goes through and kind of describes in more detail. But essentially what we're doing is basically we're creating this file, and this little EOF and file kind of convention is a way of us being able to actually see the output and have that redirect into a file. So if we go in here and then run that again, you can see everything that we pasted in. Essentially, just what that did was create a file with the contents of this text right over here. There's some pretty detailed references about what each of these pieces are within the Docker file. We've got a link here as well, and let me pull up another link that kind of goes into some of these command references. But basically, it goes through what each of these different pieces in the file is that you use to build. I'll also paste a link. There are various methods for being able to build containers. This is a really common one that's out there. So as you see, there are some different parts. Basically, we're looking at what are our starting images. This is going to be a node application, so we're going to be starting from that. We're defining a directory for the actual container itself to be able to run in, copying in some contents, and then making this available. So this is going to be a web server that's running within the container.
I want to recognize that this lab does move pretty fast, right? It is an intermediate or an advanced topic on here, and I just want to check in with attendees as you're following along. Is this a bit of repeat, hopefully, for some of you, just getting some of the foundations on there, or some of you, is this your first experience with Docker Kubernetes? Just some feedback, or feel free to put it in the chat, or if you want to come off the mic, just comment on it. Maybe you're busily trying to absorb everything. That's fine too.
Yes, and I will come in here and pull up a link. As I mentioned, this might be a good time to pull up a couple of these resources. We can paste this in chat as well. But here is a document that has a reference, and in addition to this reference, there's some info about just best practices for writing Docker files, what that looks like, some tips and so on as you're going through the process. And as we mentioned, the great thing about this is all of this is available for reference as well. So if you wanted to try this in your own environment and not in a Qwiklabs environment, a lot of these same instructions are going to work. If you've got Docker set up on your local machine and you wanted to be able to test this out and run through the process, a lot of these steps are going to be portable. One of the nice things is just within Qwiklabs, as mentioned, it's kind of a fresh environment that's already set up and there for you. A lot of these tools are already pre-installed within the Cloud Shell terminal. So we're going to do this second piece of it now, which is actually creating the application. So the first part of it was more the blueprint for the container that's going to hold the application. And now the second part is actually the application that's going to be running inside the container. So again, I'm going to go through and copy this. I won't go through all of the details of the application, but the TLDR on this is just we're starting a web server that's listening on a certain port 80, and is going to return a hello world. So similar to what we were doing in the beginning, it's just sort of a fancier world. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And now if we go in and take a look, here's the file, that same file that we created using the method that we used earlier, which was going through and basically setting up this app.js file. So the next step is now we're going to build the image. So here is the command to be able to build the image. We're going to do docker build. dash key, node app, and couple things that are important about this that I will note is, one, we're going to be building in this local directory. So there is a dot at the very end of it that says we're building out of this local directory. This is something I've forgotten many times, and you're like, why isn't my command working? Well, it's looking for this target of what you're building. And also, I did notice that I have a typo there. So I had 3 keys. So the node app, earlier we might have been talking about that tag. What this 0.1 at the end of it is a tag, and that is something that you might use to be able to note a version. So if you are working on various versions, you have a 1.0, a 1.1, it's a way of being able to distinguish between your different builds. So let's go ahead and run this. We'll click the authorize. This is just kind of part of the security that's baked into Cloud Shell, into the cloud platform. And it will take a second, and then should kick off shortly. All right. So while this goes through, we're on step 1 of 5. So this is going to be running for a little bit. All of the output isn't here, but you could just see how it's going through some of these different pieces. So while we're waiting for that to go through, then we can do a little bit of a tour of Cloud Shell here. So, we've gone through just this ability to be able to toggle between Cloud Shell here at the bottom and the entire UI that's here and available. You can also launch this into its own window and have this sort of separately running, so that all of your tools are here and available from the editor, from the from your own browser window. There we go. Dismiss that. There we go. And got a little wonky because of the incognito mode. So one thing that I wanted to show you all while we're here is another feature of Cloud Shell is that we actually have a built-in editor. So this is your own development environment that's available that actually links directly into that same terminal and that same instance that we were looking at. You can see there are a ton of tools here on the side. What I'm going to do is open the folder, and you can see here's that same test folder that we built, along with the files that we created. And now, we've gone through that whole process of being able to copy it in through the command line, but actually we're able to do this directly here from the Cloud Shell editor as well. One of the first things I usually do when I come here is turn it to something that is a little bit more visually appealing and easier on the eyes. You've got integration with other things like source control. And one of the really cool things is Cloud Code as well, which is a plugin that integrates both with this Cloud Shell editor, but also just your favorite development environment. And it integrates with basically various APIs within Google Cloud so that you can actually go through, develop things using this browser and integrate back in natively to Google Cloud Tools. So we'll go ahead and come back to the terminal now because we're probably done with our build. It's a relatively small build in the grand scheme of things. So, we may be done running. And as you see, we're back here. I'll go ahead and maximize this. And we have successfully built our application. So you can see it's gone through all of these steps, all of the command output. You just have to kind of look for any errors that would come up. But here at the end of it, we are successful. So now let's go back and rerun this command that we ran earlier, Docker images. Now, as you can see, we've got a couple different things here. We have the hello world, which is the one that we saw earlier. And as a note, Cat's coming to say hi. So as a note, we didn't specify a tag when we were running hello world before. If you don't put a tag in there, it's just going to pull latest, and that's why it says latest right here. Here is the image that we just built, node app, along with the tag, which is 0.1. And if you remember when we created that initial Docker file, we had specified from node, basically this image, which is the base image, is also here on the system as part of that whole build process. It was pulled down. So cool, we've gone through two major components of being able to interact with Docker. The first part was run, where we went through and we did a run for the Hello World app that was just out there and available on the public. Now we went through the build process of actually building an image that was a node-based Hello World web server. And now what we're going to do is go back to run, but we are going to run the image that we just created. So I'm going to run this command over here. Docker run. This first part, basically, this port mapping is just saying the ports to be able to make this service available because we're just running it here locally on our system. We're creating a name for it and specifying the image that we want to run, which is the node app, node-app 0.1. And as you see here, we have the server running at 0.0.0.80. Now we should be able to do a web preview on, or we're not be able to do that because this lab isn't set up. All right, so I'll trash that idea. We're actually going to, I was kind of going off map there, but we'll go through and do the curl command here. Oh, actually, we can do plus. So we're going to create, what I did was just click the plus here to be able to create another instance of the terminal. So basically, you're still on the same machine, you're running commands, but we can leave this, this here running the server that's running. So basically what the curl is going to do, it's just like being able to hit this actual web server endpoint. So we'll do curl localhost, which is the local system, on the port that we map to, which is port 4000. And as you see, the service responded also with a hello world. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and close out this initial terminal. And we'll run this command basically to be able to stop and remove the container. So as I mentioned here, we're going to stop the application. And this part of the command is basically once we've successfully stopped it, then run the second command. You can also just run docker stop my app. And when that's done, run that second part of the command as two separate things. But this is kind of a way, if you know a series of things that you're going to be running in sequence, you can kind of type once and then wait for it all to finish. All right, cool. So it looks like we're good. And what we're going to do now is we're going to rerun a similar command, but now we're going to add this -d. And what that basically does is it will run this in the background rather than the way that you saw it the first time. It kind of left everything held up on the terminal. Now this is just going to run in the background. And I think I double pasted in there. So let me. Do this. All right, so we're going to do run. Okay, well, what happened is it did run already, but I double pasted it. So if we go back here, we'll actually see the container running. So I passed me took care of this, and we actually, if you see here, when we did Docker PS, we actually have this container image that is up and running. The command that's running here, which is basically node and that application that we have, and it's up and online, which is good, and the ports are being forwarded now here, and it's called my app. So just so you know, the error comes back basically that shows us we've already run it. It's already running an application. So there's some error checking built in here. If you try to do the same thing twice, or if you wanted to run this a second time, basically you would just have to give it a new name, and you can have multiple instances of the same thing running on a system. And so now what we're going to do is just look at some of the logs for the container. You can see here the container ID. Let me leave this expanded out because it sort of wraps this view if the terminal window is too short. So we're going to this and go logs. And what we're doing is just running the logs for that container. And you can see here's the output the server's running. So now what we're going to do is we're going to rerun, or actually we're going to rebuild, but make a modification and create a new version of this application. So here, you know, we are going to go back into the directory, but actually let's do things a slightly different way, because we kind of talked about this previously, where we went into the editor to be able to run this. So let's go ahead and run the editor in the window. All right, so instructions say, like, let us replace this text with some other text of our choice. So rather than saying hello world, let's say hello study jam. I'll go ahead and save this. So we've saved this file. Basically now if we go back and take a look at it, we have our new text here. And what we'll do is we'll go back and rebuild this, but we'll give it a new tag. So let's go ahead and build and tag this using node app. But now we're going to say 0.2. Let's see. All right, so what happened now, and this is going to be just some live troubleshooting, is we are actually not in that test directory that we started in. You know, part of it was going between these windows. So what we'll do is go back into that test directory so we can build this application. So let's go back in, test, and that CD is just for change directory. And we will rerun the Docker build command. And we're going through and doing the build. If you notice something, this was actually a lot faster than that first build that we had done. And this is similar to what happened when we did that original Hello World, where it had to pull the Hello World image from Docker Hub. The same deal is we already have this node image on the system. So now when we went through and did another build based on that, it was a lot faster because really we were just making that one text change. So let us continue on. So now we're going to rerun this. And I'm going to copy actually just the first portion. So now we're going to go back, rerun this container. We're going to use a different port, 8080, and a new app name, which is my app 2 for this second image. So we run this, and let's go ahead and do the same command we were running earlier, which is docker ps. And we can see we've got my app, and we've got my app too. And if we go through and do a test, you can see we went from Hello World to Hello Cloud Study Jam. And then we can also go back and do that same command and see port 4000. So you can see on the same system, we have two separate applications, one that is running Hello World and the other one that's running Hello Cloud Study Jam. So here where things can get really great with containers, because you can have multiple versions running different, if you wanted to have different versions of Node or maybe slightly different variants of an application. These are all kind of running independently and also portable so that you can move these to different systems and still get the same behavior. So Hello World on this system will still be the same as Hello World in somebody else's, Cloud Shell or Cloud VM and so on. So the next portion that we're going into here, and let me do a quick time check to look at the debug. How are we doing on time?
I think we're tracking okay, Muriel. And I'm glad to see that our attendees are keeping up at the kind of 1 to 10 and people saying they're at a 9. So they're keeping right up. That's good.
Okay.
The pace is going well.
So,
are there any questions about anything in the lab, like any of the content? Does anybody have any questions?
Svetlin, you had put a comment in. I'll call you out. You said this is your first time. Is this your first time running a container, or this is the first time running a container in GKE at Kubernetes?
Running a container in Kubernetes.
Cool.
Okay, and so the second part of this will actually be launching into Kubernetes. So for here, we're actually working just within this sort of build and development environment to create a Docker image. And from here, this container can now be deployed however you'd like it to be in the platform. And one of the really great things about Kubernetes is that now we can take what we've got here, which is just some individual containers doing different things. And where Kubernetes really comes into play is now when we want to have these different services talk to each other, or if you wanted to define rules for the size of the application. Say you want to have several versions, or you want to make sure that you respond to things like load and traffic and so on, or add in additional security rules. Where Kubernetes comes in is being able to stitch all of these pieces together so that things like this port mapping and all of these different services that you have are now managed at more of a centralized level. So you can really take something and expand it out, adding in other services, different applications, having all of these things interact with each other, and also have all of that infrastructure really managed for you. So hopefully we'll have some time today to be able to go into in retrospect, looking at this first part of it, which is just going through all of our baseline in the container world. It is a lot more involved, but the Kubernetes portion of it is actually going to be pretty fast to go through our quick start of let's go through, get a cluster launched, bring everything up and running online, and then you're good to go. So let's go just quickly through this debug process. We'll do the debug, and then the next portion of it is going to be actually publishing this image. So you remember we were in and pulled an image down from Docker Hub. Now, what we're going to do after we do a little bit of troubleshooting is and inspecting is going through and publishing this into the Google Container Registry. So Google has a few different options for being able to host your containers and artifacts and so on. Container Registry and Artifact Registry. I won't go into the differences between that too much right now, but just know there is a way to securely and privately host the images and artifacts and so on that you build. Docker Hub had stuff that was available, public for everybody. One of the great things with GCR is you can build in a lot of your authentication and security and so on. So say you wanted to build an image that was just for your team, then you would be able to have that lockdown so that it would only be accessible to the folks that you wanted to be available to. So we did Docker logs here, which we had run earlier. And as you can see, we are pulling up just the logs from that specific container. And now, the container is kind of running as this isolated environment. But what we're going to do next is be able to actually get into this running container and run some commands, similar to the way that we're running commands here within the terminal. So what we'll do is we're going to do Docker exec. We'll also do that container ID, which we already named, but it's fine. Bash, and basically what we're going to be executing and running is bash, which will just basically get us to that command line. So if you see here, now our prompt changes from the student, which was the user that we were logged in with here in our home test directory, to now we're root in this, which you can notice matches the actual ID of that container. And we're here in this /app directory. If you might remember back when we were creating the files, there was a section in that Docker file where we actually defined this as our local directory that we were going to be, that would be set up as our working directory. So if we go in here and do an ls to list the contents of that directory, you can see the Docker file and the app.js, which are both the files that we created as part of the build. So, we kind of poked around a little bit. This was just a bit of inspection and debugging, but you could just see that this is something that is available depending on the way that you have your container built. You may be able to do that. So let's go ahead and exit. Now we'll do a Docker inspect. And you can see we got a lot of stuff out there. So basically what this did is it output a bunch of really detailed and useful information about the container itself. So you can see everything from basically a lot of the stuff that gets set up in the background when you create and build this container. Oh, cool, there's an inspect here. So let's do this one last thing. You don't have to worry too much about the mechanics of this. I just will say both with Docker and Kubernetes, there's sometimes the options of, all right, we can get a ton of great info, but do we need all of that info? Which in some cases is, no, we don't need to have this detailed stuff about, the graph driver or, some of the merge directories and so on. Maybe we just want a specific piece of information. And in this case, it's the IP address. So what we're going to do is go back in here and pull, find that ID. We're going to pull the IP address from the container that we inspect. This is something that we're able to do with things like Kubernetes, which, as you progress in your journey and are able to do things like inspect, the cluster on the command line, you can pull other pieces of information like this to say, all right, maybe I want to just pull the IP address, or let me pull some ID information and so on. And this is where it becomes really useful if you've got some automation tools that are built in and you're like, I just want to be able to pull this information and maybe bring it into a log or do some action based on the info that you get back from that container or service or so on. So you can see basically this command went through, did a bunch of different things, but essentially we are telling it to format our results with just this one specific piece of information, which is the IP address. And there are a ton of commands here, but also there's a ton of, Stack Overflow and other things online that if you want to look up something very particular about a container or a cluster or something like that, there are references that can say, if you need this piece of information, here is the way to be able to format that request so you get the information back that you need. So you can see here, we've got the IP address, and we're good to go. So I guess that's it for the debugging for now. There's a lot of different roads that you can go down when it comes to that. But what we'll finish off with is basically publishing this image to the container registry. So there are a few things that we need just information-wise, basically, and that's what we are going through over here. Is we've got some standard formats to have to your private registries within Google Container Registry. And here is now where we're going to go from the stuff that's in terminal and be able to see some things through the UI directly. But basically, we're going to specify, the path to this registry, which is this hostname, GCRIO, our project ID, the image, and then the tag. So the project ID is this, which you can see that is here part of this dropdown, that Qwiklabs GCP, but we also are able to find that through the command line using G commands. So here you can see it's Qwiklabs list project. And what we're going to do now is tag this image with our project ID and this whole path here, which is basically going to be our registry name. This is why I end up pasting, because you can see my all of my friendly quick typos. Flash. And we're going to say the project ID, which is not this project, but Labs node app 0.2. So when we go in here, you can see that, we didn't have to go through a build process or anything, but basically we just created a tag against that image so that we know, all right, we've got this node app image and it is tagged as the version 0.2, but we have a repository that it's going to be associated with. So now here, what we're going to do is take that and push to that repository. So basically that push process is like we're going through and publishing it. So we'll do push. And here, as we are waiting to go through this process, we're actually going to pop back into our console because we've been spending quite a bit of time here in the command line, and now we can go back and see how this all ties back in. I'll close this down at the bottom. Basically, that just took, the terminal that was at the bottom and, we launched it in its own separate window. So as I mentioned, we've got our navigation menu over here that has all of our different tools. But there is also a very handy search. So if you wanted to go in and actually search for any of these products, you're able to do that directly. But just for the practice, let's go ahead and we won't use that shortcut. We'll go here and look for our container registry. scroll past compute, serverless, and all of these different options. And we are looking for here, which is the container registry. As you can see, this is the icon for container registry. We also have the option to pin this to the top of the menu. So if you have something that you use frequently, now you have this available at the top of your list. So we'll go ahead and click on the container registry here. I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier about artifact registry. I won't go into too many of the details here, but just keep that in the back of your head that, we do have kind of a full featured, or maybe if you think of it as container registry plus, like plus, a bunch of other features. I'm just going to go back here and peek at the editor, see that we actually have completed this process successfully, which is why now when we go back in here, you can see that we have close navigation. Oh, here we go. We have this image that we have created. So you can go here, you see the little Docker image, some of the other info, you can see that tag that we created, and so on. Another cool thing is that there is vulnerability scanning built in. So maybe there was some code or library or something like that was part of your image that had some security issue that was found out there in the wild. That scanning is built in to be able to identify and then alert you like, hey, there's something that you might want to fix because there is a security problem. So what we're going to do now is we are going to pretend that we didn't do any of this build, that maybe this was just available as an image out there in a repository, and we're going to try to freshly run and pull that image from the registry. So that's what this is going to do here. This process is just going to clean up all of the stuff that we've done in our development environment. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think just overall what I'll mention shortcut-wise is we basically took a list of everything that was running in our Docker processes. You can see this Docker PS here, and it just kind of cranked through and stopped everything that was running on the system. And then after this, the next piece of it that we did is like pull a list of all of the Docker images that were there and stopped, and we're just going to wipe those all out. So basically, this was just a few set of commands to be able to do some cleanup. And so we have another piece of cleanup here as well, which is going to be cleaning up our project ID or the last child image. So let's do this. All right. Okay. So essentially, we went through all of that to kind of clean up after ourselves after the work that we just did. So you can see based on the command output, there are no images left. We've got kind of a fresh environment. And now that we did all that, we're going to actually bring the image back. Basically, what this is doing is to simulate if we were on a brand new computer or a brand new system, the same image that we had built and put into this registry will now be able to pull that down, run it, and launch it on the system just as if we had gone through that entire build process. So it's basically you did a lot of this work up front to be able to create something really consistent so that the next time you need to deploy it and launch it anywhere, you've got all of that ready to go. You don't have to go through that initial build process or any of that editing and everything. The image is packaged and ready. So let's go ahead and do Docker pull, and we're going to go through and specify that. If you see here, we've also got this whole image here listed where you've got gcr.io. And you can see here, if you click on the 3 dots and you want to show the pull command, it will actually tell you what you need to do to be able to pull that application. Another really cool thing is that you can actually, one, see and copy that command, but you can actually take this and just click this button and go through and run it in Cloud Shell. So this is going to go through and plug that directly in here to the Cloud Shell instance. So let me go ahead and run that. And now you can see it's actually going through the process of extracting and downloading, because it's not here locally within your Cloud Shell instance. It's actually going in and pulling it from this registry here. Just closing out some of the other windows that we have. So we've got some success here, pull complete. We have the status. We downloaded the latest image. And now if we go in and do Docker images, you can see that image that we've just downloaded. That's just the one that we set up and created 22 minutes ago. So we've all been here for at least 22 minutes together going through this process, actually slightly longer than that. And we'll go ahead and run, run this image.
Well, the good thing, Muriel, about that time check that you just gave yourself is it says that this lab's about a 30-minute lab, and we're just about right on time. Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I think because we launched it early,
Boy, that was right on cue, wasn't it?
I was like, man, those last 2 minutes would have or those last 30 seconds of talking would have gotten me through the day.
Oh boy.
But let's say how satisfied. Additional. We told the world hello. And
yeah. So everything there needs more O's. Told the
yes.
world hello.
Hello.
Abhishek or Svetlin, how about you guys? Has your lab timed out, or are you close to being able to complete this one? Just you can come off mute, or Abhishek had said you're about a 9 out of 10 on keeping up, so that's great to hear.
Well, I wasn't even close, so.
All right. Well, the good thing is you can go back in and go through it again.
Right.
Still having some time left. All right, Abhishek, we won't distract you. Down to the line.
Yes. And I will say, I think I started a little bit earlier, and I know we did take a few detours to talk about a couple other things. One thing that I will paste in here as well, in case you wanted a resource for this. This was a cool set of zines that go through various technical topics, not just containers, but containers is one of them. There's a PDF, but also a lot of these resources that are available that kind of go into some of the details about the mechanics of things that are going on when you build a container, what's happening, in all of the underlying plumbing, how things like networks are handled, and so on. And in addition to that, this was just one of the developers out there that created it, Julia Evans. But Google actually has one, and we're about to launch, depending on how our time goes into the Kubernetes world, where there is a guide that is based on Kubernetes that goes through sort of in a comic form. If comics aren't your jam, though, there's still a ton of really great resource guides, references, documentation, things that are a little bit heavier reading, but also go through a lot of those same concepts as well.
If you on Twitter and you follow Julia, you'll see that there are so many awesome resources. I really appreciate Julia's take on boiling things down and making it really simple. that's cool to see another one that's coming out. I didn't know about that one, Muriel. Our own.
One other thing that I will send related to the session timed out. I know I was so close to the final stretch. You know, it's like when the timer is counting down and you've got to cut the blue wire or the black wire and make sure that, you know, everything doesn't implode. But all we really imploded was this test environment here, which, you know, is relaunchable. It's ephemeral, but you can always go in and get it back. So that's kind of one of the beauties of Qwiklabs, is that you're able to go through. You know, this session still, I think, because I haven't refreshed, is fine, but at some point it's going to all start to power itself down. One last thing that I'm going to paste in as well is that there is an event that's coming up that is kind of part of Cloud Next and KubeCon. It's sort of located during that same week. It's going to be a virtual event, but it's taking some of the stuff that we've done, but multiplying it by a day's worth of content. So there's going to be a lot of great stuff here related to Kubernetes on Google Cloud. There's going to be kind of a welcome, but then a ton of content from being able to start at the beginning with building with Kubernetes and then going through configuring clusters, deploying and scaling, security, which is going to be a really important thing. So these are just kind of progressive layers in the journey as you start from the beginning and then kind of continue down with being able to run from a development environment into what you might have to do for production. So I want to get a little bit of a check from the team, just timing wise. You know, we originally had planned to go through a couple labs, but that first one, you know, I think once you're in the weeds, ended up taking us a little bit longer through the journey than originally anticipated. So, you know, we can take a peek at this. I'll kind of put the poll up to see if we wanted to actually maybe start like the first 10 minutes of it, just to get oriented around the engine and the quick start, or if it looks like we may be running up to time. How do we look? What are your thoughts?
Well, we can check with our audience and with our host, Svetlin. Typically, this is about the time where we start playing the walk-off music, right? 7:30, so about 90 minutes in, and I think we've done pretty well going through the explanation on that. I'm glad to see a couple of people keeping up or just almost got there. Think of how good you're going to be at doing it the second time through to get the lab done in the first amount of time for the Qwiklabs. And then obviously this is meant to be sort of a kickstart or a jump start to enable people to, you know, get in and get familiar with Qwiklabs and then get some of the material so that you're able to then continue with the rest of the quest. I said at the beginning, right, it's actually a 7-hour quest, and you can tell the pace that we went at here, you know, to be able to complete it all. It probably will consume, I'm going to say, at least 5 hours of your time if you're moving right through it. So with that said, Svetlin and others, maybe would it be beneficial to just maybe do a preview here with Muriel of what the GKE lab, the Kubernetes Engine lab, is showing? Or if you're working ahead and you've already done it. Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, and we don't necessarily need to go into all of the nitty-gritty details. But what I actually did, I'm not launching into this environment completely, but I'm just pulling up, you know, my demo environment here, where you can see we've got the Kubernetes Engine API. I'm going to go through and enable this so we can see there are a few different ways to be able to access and manage Kubernetes Engine, also called GKE as well, is a term that you might hear. So this allows the flexibility of saying, do you want to manage it through Cloud Shell? We're totally able to do that if we wanted to launch and run things in Cloud Shell, and that's what this lab looks like. Or you can do things through console as well. So there are these dual options of being able to run either way, just depending on the tasks that you're doing, your level of familiarity and comfort, and so on. So let me expand this out, and let's see. I think my you may notice here that I've swapped over to Firefox just to kind of handle the different profiles and incognito windows and so on. So there will be a little bit of, tuning between different browser windows, but everything will work just fine pretty much as long as you've got a web browser to be able to access this. Then you can go in and work with the cloud Google Cloud Platform. So you can see as well, in addition to the stuff in Qwiklabs, within the console, there are some different quick starts and tutorials. So there are also a lot of tutorials that are baked directly in to GCP. There are some starter credits if you do go in and wanted to create your own environment and set some stuff up. There's sort of a free tier of you being able to go through and experiment. The one thing that I will caution against is that, you just have to keep mindful of what your free tier credits are, so you don't leave something that's up and running and then end up getting charged for that in the future. That's another reason why Qwiklabs is really great, because once you're done with the lab, everything turns off and you don't have to worry about something running that you might end up having to get charged for in the future. In my own environment, I have alerts that tell me, you've got something running, or you're hitting a billing threshold or something like that. So basically, the second part of the tutorial, which I'm not going to walk through, I'm just going to talk through at a high level. Basically, you can see here the steps on the right, where you go through, you set a compute zone, which just basically says, where do you want to run your cluster? Do you want to run this in Ohio, or do you want to run it in Los Angeles, or do you want to run this somewhere in Europe? And that's something just because we've got a global network and the capability of running within different locations across the world. If a lot of your user base or team is going to be located in one location versus another, it does make an impact on things like, either performance, latency, some other things like that. So this process here will basically take you through creating a cluster, basically taking an application similar to the Hello World that we did and ran directly in Docker, but now we're putting it into Kubernetes. And this process will just go through, get you set up to do that, deploying the application and deleting the cluster. And actually, the quick start is going to be a little bit faster than the initial foundation of Docker that we went through to begin with. So a few different ways of doing this. One, either here through the console, but this lab will take you through doing that through the command line. And then you'll be off and running.
Awesome. That's an excellent preview, Muriel. Thank you. Good. All right. Well, we had a couple of people that they did tap out right at the 90 minutes, and that's fine. That's perfect. Perfect amount of content to get through for that first section, and then a nice preview on continuing on to the second Qwiklab in this quest. And so for that quest, those who are viewing the recording or those who are still following along, if you complete that entire quest, then you will unlock a full 30-day Qwiklab subscription. So that's one motivation there, in addition to just free access to cool technologies and playing along with it to learn. So Svetlin, thank you for kicking us off at the beginning. And I know we had some follow-up things at the end. Just want to reiterate that this is part of a series. So we do have additional cloud labs going on. We've got one coming up next week that's going to be on machine learning and artificial intelligence, ML and AI. And then we also have one more before we go into Google Next for a week. But before we close out, I want to thank Muriel for leading us on an excellent summary and presentation guide through deploying Kubernetes on Google Cloud. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Thanks for everyone who attended and participated, and we hope to see you at the next GDG San Diego Cloud Jam.